Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Our special guest, Michael Specht, has arrived, so. Okay, before we get started, let's just go ahead and have a prayer again because we want God to be with us in everything that we're doing. Father, thank you so much for being with us every day, all day, and especially on Sabbath. And please bless the rest of our time together. We pray that it would be productive, that we would learn and grow together, that we would remember our goal of reconciling the world to you. And thank you for hearing this prayer. Amen. So one thing that I think we have not mentioned that is important to me, at least as a person who believes a lot in research, NVC, nonviolent communication, which we are calling non-judgmental or compassionate, has been peer-reviewed and evidence-based, has had much research done on it that is showing that the evidence indicates that using NVC in all kinds of settings, including education, medicine, like between physicians and their patients, between administration and physicians, between law enforcement and gangs, law enforcement and communities, prisoners and prison guards, between governments, between, what else am I forgetting, Kristen? Just business. Yes, thank you. Business, I think it was actually researched first in business, perhaps. But there's a world of research about NVC, and it's showing that it has positive impact. And so if you're interested in research, go ahead and look it up. But we just want you to know that what we're sharing has been proven to be very effective in all kinds of settings. Oh, and another in medicine that it has shown to be really effective is in the care providers, so nurses and doctors and therapists, all kinds of providers do better when they are using NVC in their own lives and in their caring for patients. They have better resilience and they're not suffering as much compassion fatigue. So those research, studies are very interesting to me. So I just wanted you to know that before we go on. So if you are just joining us, Michael, we have talked about the first 3 steps of nonviolent or compassionate communication. This afternoon we're going to touch on the 4th one, and then we're going to leave ourselves time to actually kind of apply everything, remembering that we really are hoping, our hope and prayer is that we would influence others to unify, that our churches would have unity in them, that by having unity in our churches, our communities, our families, our workplaces, we would draw others to Jesus. That's the ultimate goal. The first 3 steps, that's a great question. Who can tell us what the first 3 steps are? And remember, Kristen shared a little mnemonic device called OFNER that Pastor Jerry Nelson created because he loves those. Who can tell us what step 1 is of OFNER? Making an observation. So step 1 is to make an observation as opposed to judging a situation. So let's say something difficult happened on your way to church. Someone pulled in front of you and you nearly had an accident. a judgment was saying that person cut me off, they're rude, they're not paying attention, just deciding all the things that you think are true about that person. What would an observation be instead? Wow, that was very close. That's a great observation. That's just the facts, right? It was a close call. You almost had a collision. That's an observation. Yeah. Do you guys have another mic? Oh, here.
I'm sorry to interrupt. If someone hits you, how are you going to describe that? In using this
Not
system?
judgmental. Okay, give us some help, you guys. If someone actually hits you, how could you make an observation? Someone hit me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what happened. Without judging them or giving any kind of evaluation, like they weren't paying attention and they hit me, or they're jerks and they hit me, or what, fill in the blank of whatever our go-to might be. But yeah, just an observation. I was just hit, or we just had a collision or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. And we're not in any way saying that you don't talk about bad things that are happening. We're just trying to discover a way to talk about them where we're taking responsibility for our own part, because we always have a responsibility for our own part, no matter if we're completely innocent. Okay. So that was, okay. And what is step 2 of Offner? Feelings, yes. Can someone share an emotion, or another word for emotions is feelings. Can someone share an emotion that you are feeling right now? Full? Okay, it could be an emotion. If you're full of information and it's flooding over, what else could it be? Well, wait, just let's finish on full. What else could full mean? Your stomach is full. So that would be more a physical sensation than an emotion, right? Yeah. Okay. But you could be content. Good. Absolutely. Absolutely. You could be content, so you're full. You could be feeling very spiritual. You're full of God's power. So yeah. Yes, George. Oh, I need to stay up here for the... You want to go to sleep. Okay, what would the emotion be? He wants to go to sleep. Is that an emotion?
No.
What is it? It is in our Offner.
It's physical. It's thinking of myself.
Okay, no, but that's okay. It's okay to think of yourself. But if we think of Offner, O-F-N, what might sleepiness be? It might be a need. You might need to have some sleep, right? So a need is very important, and that brings us to step 3, which is needs. And you'll find when you start really paying attention to your emotions and needs, you'll find that your emotion is always connected to a need that is either met, you feel joyful because your need is met, or it's unmet and you feel sad, frustrated, whatever it is. So needs and feelings go together. Okay. Can anyone else share a need that you have right now? With just 2 steps? Oh, with these 3 steps. So first you make an observation. I was just hit. I feel terrified. I have a need for safety. I have a need for safety. Or in this situation, since you've already been hit, you have a need for resolution, like you want to make sure you get the insurance information and whatever. So the need might be resolution or information. I have a need for information, right? Okay, so that brings us to our last step, which we're going to talk about just for a little while, which is R, Offner, and that is for a request. So in following through with that scenario, what might her request be? She's just been hit. She feels afraid. She has a need to feel safe. What could her request be of the other person? Take me to the hospital. Would you give me a ride to the hospital? Sure. Yeah. Or would you share your information, your insurance information, whatever? Okay? So a request is just what we're going to ask of the other person. Okay? And we're going to talk about that a lot more. Remember that our purpose is to increase our ability to live with choice. And why am I not using this? Our goal is to increase our ability to live with choice, meaning, and connection to others, to connect empathically with ourselves and with others, to have more satisfying relationships, and number 3 is to share resources so everyone is able to benefit. Okay, so requests. One of the things that I would encourage when you're beginning to do requests is to make them very simple and very straightforward. And so, for instance, back into our scenario of being hit, if she said, I would like to request that you make this better, would they know what she's needing? No. So you want to make it as clear as possible, just stating a request. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Kristen.
You can just stay up here because we're doing every
Okay.
other one now.
All right.
I have an analogy about this for you guys. I think you'll really like it. Watch this. So, you know how we were talking about white knuckling it when you're trying to suppress those emotions? So when I was up here, I was stressed, and I thought, I have to press the clicker really hard for it to move to the next slide. I was pressing. I was doing a thumb workout. I was not lying that I was doing a thumb workout. And so I was pressing it so hard. When I was in a more relaxed state in between sessions, Bob and I had a time. We had a connection, a little training. And he's like, yeah, I'm just pressing it. Oh, I'll just press it. Oh, I don't have to press it hard. I'm just barely pressing it. Look at me go through those slides. So there's power in taking a deep breath and realizing you don't have to force something, right? So I just want to remind you, next time you're trying to force something to white knuckle it, just take a break and talk to Bob.
But don't call me Bob.
But don't call me Bob. Don't you dare. So automatic negative thoughts are very pervasive, and it's important to scan your mind for those before you're making a request. Ask yourself, what is it that I'm needing, and what's a very specific request that I could make in relation to these needs? Automatic negative thoughts or distorted thoughts. There's a whole list of distorted thoughts in the back of your notebook, which are really great to look through and see if you can identify with any of those, because it can force us to make a judgment. So with the very first step, we're focusing on that judgment related to the distorted thoughts opposed to the observation. So it can trip us up from the beginning. So anytime we scan our brain for automatic negative thoughts or ants, we can remind ourselves to focus on making an observation. So for example, the first one, he should be cleaning up after himself. What could you change that to take out the judgment? Can anyone think of something? So what's an observation about what's going on? Okay.
Do you guys have a roving mic for us
He-
again? Thanks.
he didn't
Just
clean
raise
up?
your hand.
Or I see there are dishes in the sink, or I see there are clothes on the floor. Yeah, so the should. Have you guys ever heard stop shoulding on yourself and others? It's kind of a helpful way to remember it. I shouldn't have to ask. How could we reframe that? Okay. And so what are you needing? Maybe I'm needing follow through based on a previous conversation that we had. I need your help in cleaning up.
But also connected to that one, I shouldn't have to ask. Early on in my marriage, I thought that if I had to ask for something and then that was done for me, then it didn't really count because the other person didn't think of it, and so they didn't really love me, and it was this whole self-defeating cycle. And I have come to believe that no other person can know you fully unless you let yourself be known by asking for what you need. And so now I will have times when what I'm really needing from my husband is empathy. And, you know, he may be trying to solve a situation or whatever. And so I will actually say, you know what I'm really needing is to hear you say, I'm so sorry, that sounds really hard. In the past, that never would have worked for me because I am the one that came up with the words. But when I tell him that that's what I'm needing and he says it, he really means it, and I can receive it like he really means it. And it doesn't matter that I'm the one that said those words. In fact, he receives it as a gift because I'm being so vulnerable to show him what I really need. And it is hard to be that vulnerable and tell people what you really need, because what if they say, wow, yeah, that's stupid, you're a loser, you're so insecure, or whatever judgment can come out of that. But I'm wanting to encourage you to consider that asking exactly for what you need is actually a beautiful thing.
Definitely. What about you want to say something, Thad?
Can think of to state these requests diplomatically is, could you help me pick up the bedroom? Could you help me clean up the kitchen? And hopefully the person will understand that part of what's being done, you know, they contributed to the situation, but you know, we both made the kitchen dirty.
Sure. And are you really meaning that they'll help you and you'll be working on it as well?
Well,
Or are
Jen,
you meaning it in code for,
I've
if you could
had-
really help me, but I'm not doing it?
I've had people say, will you help me? And then when I get started helping them, they're nowhere to be found.
Exactly.
So
Okay,
I've
so-
encountered that.
Right, so that doesn't feel good either, right?
So
So
you-
that's a great one if you really
If
intend to
you
help.
really are going to be honest
Yes,
about,
but, yeah.
you know, leading by example, and that you're willing to do what you're asking the other person is
Sure.
willing to do. You know, it's just like Jesus. He's asking us to do things. It's nothing that he didn't do himself
Oh, that is for sure.
first.
Yeah,
And I think the cherry on top, too, is connecting the feeling to the need. So if you're able to say, hey, I'm really exhausted, or I'm really frustrated and overwhelmed from a busy day, could you help me do that? Because then it's connecting the feeling to the need. So what about I deserve this? This is a really good one, because we hear this so much on TV, or just in people's daily lives. I deserve this, I deserve a good relationship, or I deserve a great job, you know. I've put in the time, I've put in the effort. I deserve a wonderful vacation. And when we look at our lives in regards to our goodness, it's very scary, because ultimately we don't deserve anything. By God's grace, we are saved. It's not something that we're earning. We don't all of a sudden deserve something because of what we've done. So he's made us worthy of eternal life, and praise God that we don't have to earn our way up. And I think instead of keeping track of all the time we've put in and what we do or don't deserve, what if instead we focused on identifying our feelings and connecting them to our needs? Because then it would be so much more authentic. And it is kind of scary being vulnerable in those ways, but it's more honest to actually what's going on inside of us instead of deserving something. Yes.
I'm sorry, I will try to do quickly. If you said the word need, I feel that unconsciously you put it the one that is in charge of that. So every time that it's going to be something with that area, you're the one that is in charge, because you already said in the past, can you help me? Can you use another word, or how can you manage that?
Another word to identify your need? Yes. Yeah, well, it depends on what your need is. You could have a need for understanding, for contribution, for connectedness, closeness, safety. So if you're talking about help in the kitchen? For example. Yeah. So you could say, you know, I really need your support right now because I'm tired. Does that answer your question?
Or I need, at some point, if you need to have help sharing the responsibility of jobs, you could say something like that, where, is it possible that you're responsible for this and I'll be responsible for this? Can we negotiate who's going to be responsible for what? And then you're not taking responsibility. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I have a question, kind of follow up on the I deserve this. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but it's such an individualistic society, right? Especially in the Western culture. And so much is focused on the individual, you deserve this. And it's
Entitlement.
interesting, I have friends, yes, who are having a difficulty finding relationship with others. And one of the things that is often named is, I deserve a partner who X, Y, Z. I deserve, and so I do think that there's some room for, yeah, you do deserve this. Like, there's room for patting yourself on the back and going, you worked really hard and you are deserving of X, Y, Z, without having to negate the fact that, you know, Jesus gave his life up for you, right? There's room for, I think that we can coexist with both. And I agree that sometimes it limits. So I'm just kind of wondering what words you would offer for somebody who, you know, is more evidently kind of keeping something, you know, at arm's length in the name of deserving. But what would be better language to insert in I deserve this?
I wonder if you could try to kind of guess what the need and feeling is. So, oh man, you're frustrated, or it's really frustrating because you've been working towards a healthy relationship. You know, you really want that connection. You need that connection, right? And kind of reframe. I don't know if it's so much reframing, but restating it in different words. Yeah, because you're not going to go to someone and say, no, you don't deserve this, actually. You know, that's going to totally slam the door. But I think just helping them think of it in a little bit different light of, well, what are you feeling behind the deserve? Because usually there's a lot of feelings there. And it sounds really frustrating and challenging because you've been waiting so long for this. Does that kind of... Do you want to
Yeah,
add?
and one other thing I would ask myself, if that's where I was at, is if your attitude is that you deserve this and it's not happening, then what is your responsibility? Do you lose the responsibility of discovering and finding and creating a good relationship? If you deserve one, it's not happening, then where is your power in that? Where is your 100% responsibility for your own health and happiness? And so I totally get what you're saying. You know, hard work does deserve a vacation. You know, so there is deserve in our life on all kinds of things. You know, we deserve a good cold drink of water after we've worked out really hard. So it's not we want to kick out the word, but if it's creating in the mind an idea that this is someone else's problem because I'm all ready for the right relationship and it's not happened and I deserve it, and so it's someone else's problem, then where do we go from there? How do we make a difference in our own life and in the lives of those around us if it's not something that we can take responsibility for? Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay.
So I just want to share briefly automatic negative thoughts that I had been having. So I was struggling a lot with Charlie and Addie and them getting along. And for a while there, it was frustrating because every day there would be some challenge. And Charlie would say something unkind to Addie or hurt Addie, and I didn't know what to do. And as I would get angry based on her actions, we would just amp each other up. So I was laying in bed one night, and I'm asking God, you know, why is this happening? And he suggested try NVC. I thought, oh, okay, cool. So I sighed, and I was like, okay, let's go through the steps, make an observation. And my stomach dropped because my observation was Charlie's a monster. Is that an observation? No, I was judging my daughter, and that's the first word that came into my head because I so badly wanted to protect Addie and to teach Charlie how to behave in a kind and loving way. And so when I was able to realize, wow, if I'm actually thinking that in my mind, how can I treat her anything but? There's nowhere to go from here. And so I was really grateful that I had that moment to go through those steps and realize, okay, well, there is another way to see it. You know, Charlie's hurt and struggling and wanting independence, and it's a hard situation working with a sibling. So I prayed, you know, God, please help me to have a chance to work on this. And I was really excited. I was working on some star charts for Addie, Charlie, and myself. I had my grounding techniques that I was going to use. And first thing the next morning, I had a beautiful opportunity to practice. And there was an altercation between them. And instead of white knuckling it, pressing the button so hard it doesn't even work, I was able to share my frustrations and concerns, protect Addie, but also see Charlie as a hurt little girl instead of a monster. And from there, we were able to move through the challenging situation. So those automatic negative thoughts can be so pervasive and really affect so much of our lives that we're not even realizing.
In fact, on automatic negative thoughts, there's a really great book by Dr. Amen. He runs the Amen clinics on brain health, and he's written some books for kids about automatic negative thoughts, and he actually draws little ants and, you know, talks about going to a picnic and the ants show up uninvited. And so the automatic negative thoughts start very early in life, and kids can have, you know, kids tend to all or none thinking anyway. And so when they're starting to have some negative situations, it's like, I'm never going to have any friends. It will always be like this. Nobody likes me. And so he encourages parents to learn, or teachers to learn, a phrase that says, are you sure that that's true 100% of the time? And he asks little kids that. Are you sure 100% of the time that nobody likes you? What about your mom? Oh yeah, my mom likes me. Are you sure that no one wants to play with you? What about when you played with blah, blah, blah? So he helps them to actually reframe and rediscover that what they're thinking is not true at all, because it has to be true 100% of the time for it to be true. And so that's one of the ways he helps kids to quit having automatic negative thoughts, and we can do the same with ourselves.
I wanted to comment briefly on deserve once more, because it's such an explosive, dangerous issue. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you work for your employer, you deserve your pay. You don't deserve the love of your spouse. That's a gift. And the moment you forget that, there's going to be trouble.
Yeah, and even an employer, you could say you worked for your employer and you earned your pay, you know, which, yeah, we use deserve in the same way as earned.
Yeah, but you don't deserve what somebody has to voluntarily give you as a gift.
It's a gift.
Which is love, and that's
But
the
it is
greatest.
also a contract, right?
The contract lives only as long as
Yeah,
you
as both
bring-
parties agree to the
you
contract.
understand-
You're right, absolutely.
You understand the nature of love. It's
Right.
voluntary.
It is voluntary. It's a
It's
gift
not
that we give to
deserved.
each other,
Yeah,
right?
it's not deserved.
No,
You
you're right.
can't- You're not owed it. Okay.
All right, thanks, Dad. Oh, my turn. Okay, so it's very easy to think that we're requesting something of someone until they say no. So let's say, back to our collision, and you ask if they would be willing to share their insurance information with you. And what if they say no? So if they will not agree to share their insurance information, then you need to talk to the police, right? So I mean, there are boundaries that we need to put in place when there are situations like that that are not safe. And so, but let's say it's not something so egregious, and someone says no. We know if it's a request or demand based on how we react to it, right? It's a demand if the speaker criticizes or judges after hearing no, like, how in the world can you say no to that request? Or it's a demand if the speaker lays a guilt trip after hearing a no. Like, I always do everything for you. Why won't you do one little thing for me? But it's a request if the speaker shows empathy toward the other person's needs, even after hearing a no. And this one is pretty much as hard as not judging, to be able to truly accept a no. And only you can know your heart and how you're reacting to that person, but a request is simply a request. And we're going to talk about boundaries in just a second, because obviously there are many times if a request is said, if someone says no to a request, that there are times when you have to put boundaries in to protect you or your kids or whatever the situation is. So there are times when we will have to do further action if we get a no. But in building relationships and communicating, we want to make requests. Well, we always want to make requests, but anyway, we'll talk about boundaries in a second.
So healthy boundaries are like property lines, where I start and end and where someone else starts and ends. And it's important to protect myself in the relationship and also to respect others and what they're needing. So it's self-protection and self-containment. And again, like Mom just said, it's important to be able to say no and accept when someone else says no, and being able to clearly communicate both sides and both people's wants and needs, while also respecting others' values, beliefs, opinions, even if they're different from yours, which can be really, really challenging. And I think one thing that makes it a little easier, if you see the person and they're able to share their feelings and needs, because it definitely helps us see each other as human when people are willing to be vulnerable and share their feelings and their needs. So I had been waiting for an email from our CPA just a couple months ago with our tax return. And I hate doing taxes. I hate it. I dislike doing anything with money, to be honest. And so I finally got the dreaded email. I opened it, but I waited until the evening so I could actually handle it. And I reviewed it. Charlie and Adam were on the opposite side of the living room and taking pictures and laughing together. And after reviewing the return, I set out to make a payment, because in my mind, right as I receive a bill, I need to pay it immediately. So I never, ever, ever, ever have to think about it again. It's out of my mind forever, done. Let's move on with our lives. So I had some questions that I needed to ask Adam. And I kept interrupting Adam and Charlie's time together. My voice was getting louder and my eyes were bulging. And Adam and I started arguing about the details of the payment. And a lot was getting lost in translation. So Adam said, I don't want to do this right now. He made a request, and I kept talking. In my mind, I couldn't function until the payment was made. So I couldn't enjoy my weekend until the payment was made. I probably couldn't even think about anything else until the payment was made. So I kept pushing. Finally, Adam said, this is interrupting my time with Charlie right now. I'm not going to work on taxes. And my frontal lobe re-engaged, and I apologized to Charlie and Adam, because when it has to do with something with quality time, that really is so important to me, especially with Charlie and Adam. And thankfully, it kind of helped snap me out of it and realize life can go on if I don't pay this immediately. So he first made a request, right? He was trying to set that boundary. And then he moved on to, I want to spend this time with Charlie, which helped me step back. How could I have responded using NVC or NJC the first time Adam set a boundary? Can you guys think of possible explanations?
I think earlier on you had mentioned about how you were feeling and maybe naming that, which I think for me, a lot of the times I can relate, where you're just like, clearly you can hear my voice. Don't you know how I'm feeling? Like I'm
Clearly.
expressing that I'm upset. But if you would have started with, this is making me really anxious. I feel like I can't keep going. And this weekend, would you mind helping me with this right now? Or, whatever it is. But being able to name how you were feeling might have helped Adam go, oh, this is a little bit more urgent to her. And then still, even if he needed to make his own boundary, that could have been helpful to him to understand where you were at.
Yeah, I love that. And honestly, even if nothing changed and he still kept with his same boundary, I would have felt better if I had said that. And he said, wow, Kristen, this is so hard. I promise we'll work on this together later. Do you think I would have been okay? Probably. Yeah, I could have moved on in my mind, just realizing, okay, we're putting a pin in it and we're going to come back to it and it's going to be okay, instead of it escalating. Another thing, like we talked about self-compassion a little bit earlier, something that I would say to myself is, Kristen, I know this is really stressful for you. So this is if I'm not getting that from Adam. And I know this is hard and completely overwhelming and you just want to get it paid. It's hard, I'm sorry. Again, that's not fixing the situation, but it's helping to tap into my brain and press that dopamine button so I'm getting some compassion, and hopefully it'll hold me out until I can make the payments. Yes.
I was thinking it would be nice that he could just get up for a minute and walk to you and say, babe, I'm going to take care of him a little bit. Let me just spend time with my son, and I will. We'll work on it.
So if he could just get up.
Yeah, just say something real sweet to your ear, quietly. You would be much better. You'd like, oh, he cares about me. Thank you so much. I think that's cool.
Yeah, and it's hard, right? Because he had other needs too. He's working all day and he comes home and he's so thrilled to play with Charlie. He is locked in. And they were doing Snapchat, and when they do Snapchat, there's nothing else going on in the world. They have so much fun. They really love it. And so it's hard working with people, right? Because everyone has different needs. And most of the time, the needs are not shared between each other, right? So how cool would it be if, we were able to share that in a moment and they could continue on? Yes.
Let's change a little bit the same story. Let's say that someone, you already identified that is procrastinating with something that it has to be done. And let's say that you receive a bill. So how do you going to negotiate that? Because the person doesn't want to do it, not because of this time, the situation. Yeah, for some reason he's activating something in his mind and he doesn't want it to do it. How are you going to negotiate that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it'd be interesting to understand his feelings and needs. Sometimes it's scary just thinking about the bills, right? Or it's overwhelming. And so figuring out, or maybe asking him some questions, are you overwhelmed when you think about making the payments? Or do you need some support or help in this? What else do you think?
Yeah. Also, if it's something where it can be a divided responsibility, or rather it can be on one person or on the other person, then you might, negotiate who enjoys which part of the responsibility the most. But if it's something where you need to have a discussion because she didn't know all the information or whatever, then negotiating what needs are. And the thing that's so amazing about this process, I have had it happen in my own life with Jerry so many times. We will be in a knockdown, drag out. I mean, obviously no touching, but verbally, very upset with each other. And it'll last over 24 hours sometimes. And then finally, one of us will re-engage our frontal lobe and say, like I remember one time, it was really embarrassing because we were at Mammoth with Michael and Sierra. And we were playing, you knew that story was going to happen. We were playing games, and I got triggered by something Jerry did, and anyway, it just became this big, huge misunderstanding. And, I brought it up in front of Michael and Sierra, which was completely inappropriate. And we were just really spinning about this until they left. We were still spinning about it. And I finally, my frontal lobe must have gotten re-engaged finally, and I said to him, I said, were you feeling disrespected when I said what I said to Michael and Sierra? And he goes, yes, I was feeling so disrespected. And my heart just melted, hearing that he felt disrespected. Even if I didn't think I was being disrespectful, which I probably was, but even in situations where I have thought I wasn't being disrespectful, the fact that he felt a lack of respect from me because he was needing respect and he felt sad and frustrated and angry about that. When I heard that he needed respect, my heart melted. And Rosenberg in his book describes this over and over and over again. When we hear about someone's need, it really disarms humanity. There's a really cool quote by, I think it's Longfellow, and he said, if we could read the secret histories of our enemies, it would, oh my goodness, it would bring up for us enough sorrow and suffering to disarm all hostility, something like that. So when we hear truly what's going on for someone, when someone shares, instead of Jerry saying the things that I was doing wrong, he acknowledged that he needed respect, and it just softened my heart, and we were immediately better. And there was not really even any issue that we needed to resolve. It was just that we both need to be heard and understood. And it happens over and over and over, when you hear someone's need and their feelings that are connected to that. It just softens hearts and opens the door for just true communication. And I don't remember why we got here.
That was great.
We were playing Sorry of all games.
Oh, yeah, it was a really intense game of Sorry. Which is back to Kristen's point that most fights are not about what it is. It's about two people feeling misunderstood or hurt, wounded or whatever. Yeah. I would love to say more, but I'm not going to.
You get to say more, though. It's your turn.
Oh. Okay. So remember that we've mostly talked about us sharing our own stuff in NVC, but there are two parts, and they're equally important. One is expressing honestly. That's us sharing the Offner, our observations, feelings, needs, and requests. But the other one, which is equally important, is receiving empathically from the other person, trying to understand what they are seeing, what they are feeling, what they are needing, and what they are requesting. And most of Dr. Rosenberg's work in his book, he is doing the second one. He's not sharing his own stuff and what he's, needing and wanting. Well, he does some, especially when, but like when the story that Kristen told about the refugee camp, he wasn't saying, I'm feeling frustrated, I have a need to be relevant, would you guys consider quitting yelling at me? He didn't say that. Instead, he tried to understand what they were feeling. So the most mature person, the one who's practiced Offner the most, the one who wants to do it the most, can begin by trying to understand the other person. And it's equally important. And so many times, understanding the other person first will then open the door for connection and for you to be understood as well. So I have permission from Charlie and Kristen to tell this story. They had probably been visiting us, and she had a very long drive home, like 5 hours, with 3 children in the car. And it was a tough drive that time. And they got home. She got food ready for the kids, delicious peas, which Charlie normally loves. But Charlie got the peas and stood there and poured them on the floor. So Kristen was frustrated. She grabbed Addie and went outside to cool off. She put Addie on a chair, and Addie promptly fell off the chair and was crying because she was hurt. And then Kristen felt terrible. So she went back in and she closed the door with great vigor. She slammed the door. And Charlie came over. Well, after a little while, Charlie brought, what was it called?
Well, after I slammed it. The glass was like, whoa. I sat down on the floor and promptly started crying.
Started crying. So then Charlie brought her little pad that she can write on. After a little while, she went and got her pad, brought it to her mom, and said, "Mom, do you want to draw what you're feeling?" She was receiving empathically from Kristen. She understood that Kristen was feeling really bad. Charlie had been part of that feeling really bad, right? But she empathized with her mom, and she was trying to draw out for her what she was feeling and needing. She was practicing NVC right in that story.
And thankfully, that doesn't happen every day because that could be potentially child abuse. So self-compassion. That's a good segue into self-compassion. The three main elements of self-compassion would be mindfulness, common humanity, and kindness. So there's a way to positively relate to oneself that does not involve self-evaluations or social comparisons, but really involves compassion, which we all need, especially when we make mistakes, right? Because we do live in a broken world. And unfortunately, along with that comes mistakes. So self-compassion has been, I think, one of the biggest blessings in my life, because it really helps you hear exactly what you're needing to hear. So like we talked about last night, self-compassion would be, what do you wish a friend was saying to you in this moment? Because how many times are you looking for support from others, but they cannot read our minds? They don't know exactly what you need to hear. And yes, you can ask them to say exactly what you're needing. But what if there aren't other people around? You can still offer yourself that same kind of compassion. And if anyone is interested, I've also made some cards. So there's certain cards where there's self-compassion phrases on it, and I can just send it to you. So it's the 4 steps of compassionate communication, and this is with patients. This was for my dad's office. But this is self-compassion phrases, and when you first start, it can be a little challenging because it's kind of like speaking a different language. So, for example, I'm so sorry that you are feeling blank. I'm sorry that you're not getting the help and support you need right now. And while it's pre-written, all of these can be used for most scenarios that you're struggling with, and just hearing that phrase is helpful. And again, it helps release dopamine. And you can actually go back and process or reprocess challenging events and offer yourself compassion. For example, just a couple weeks ago, I was thinking about playing my saxophone in orchestra at Rio Lindo Advanced Academy, and I was embarrassed about it. And I thought, that's so interesting. Why am I still holding on to this? And so I thought, let's try practicing self-compassion. So when I went to Rio, I brought my saxophone because I played saxophone here at Valley View, and we were okay. We were a beginning band. And then going to orchestra, it was way different. And I was the only saxophonist, and all I brought was a broken reed. And I don't know how much of you, or how much you know, what am I trying to say? How many of you have played wind instruments and know what you can do with a broken reed? It's not much. So I tried to get the reed wet, but it was still broken. And we were playing Pirates of the Caribbean. I had an awesome solo, and it was really hard. And all I did was squeak. And I was used to doing pretty well at things that I tried. So I was able to go back and say, Kristen, that was a hard situation. That was really embarrassing. And it's still affecting you today. I'm so sorry about that. And since then, I'm feeling a lot better about it, so much so that I can share with all of you.
Yeah, one more thing about self-compassion. We actually ran across this book because of another class actually the same class that had NVC as the textbook had this book. And my students were all, I think they were graduate nursing students, and they were taking this class which was titled Compassion, because they were feeling burnt out. And so this was one of the, this was in the curriculum as an option to help people in the caring professions that are feeling burnt out, and it was taught to them to use during the day when you're seeing patients and you just don't have much left to give. That self-compassion can actually, like Kristen said, give you a dopamine boost and help you to stay present and help you to be able to connect well with your patients. And so it's a really good book. As I said last night, it is not God-centered. I mean, she's a very spiritual person, but God is not, highly, it's not focused highly on God. But as I also said last night, like Jerry says, all truth is God's truth. And so there is definitely truth in this book. It's a very evidence-based on what self-compassion does in the brain and how it can bless you. And so what I do when I read books that are not God-centered, I read between the lines and put God right in there. I just include him in the way that I process what they're saying in the book, that yes, this is true because God created compassion. Because God offers me compassion, I can offer compassion to myself. So it's not like I'm self-generating it, it's coming because God does that. And so if you choose to get this book, I just really encourage you to put that lens on everything you read, actually. No matter who it's written by, we want a lens that says, where is God in this book? How does God interact with this subject? Okay. So what we would like to ask you right now is if you would think of a time when you felt sad, hurt, disappointed, frustrated, and imagine that it happened to a good friend, and what would you say to that good friend? And then remember, after you go through that process, remember that it happened to you, and then say that to yourself. And we just want to give you 3 minutes for you guys to give yourself a chance to practice self-compassion. One thing that I don't think we've mentioned yet is when we've done this workshop, a couple other times that we did it, people actually in their own private thoughts were revisiting some really hard things that happened. And in one of my workshops, a gentleman actually ended up going to the emergency room because he was having a really severe panic attack, because he allowed himself to go to some situations in his life that had just been so tough. And he was doing that, sitting in a chair, and we didn't know what was going on for him. So the reason I'm sharing that is that if you choose to think about things that have been really difficult for you and they bring up a lot of pain or a lot of trauma or suffering, we don't want you to do that alone. We want you to not leave here feeling worse than when you came. That's terrible. So if that should be true for you, please, please talk to us or talk to someone else that's here that you trust, but just don't go through it alone, okay? We want you to know that we're available to listen. And if you should think of a really hard situation, if God brings it to mind or whatever, if it's right there under the surface already, it's okay. Offer yourself compassion, but share with someone else too if you can. Okay. Sorry. I'm kind of running off at the mouth. So again, the assignment is to think of a time when you felt like you needed compassion, and what would you say if that was your friend? Okay, does anyone have anything that they're willing to share that you needed some compassion for and what you said? Is there anyone willing to do that? Right there. Raise your hand so Ben knows. There we go. Thank you.
I just want to say that when I was talking last time,
Yes.
I don't know why my tears came out. And I said, this is not time to cry. So I had to
So you had to offer self-compassion.
to stop, But it's incredible how I didn't think in crying. Just because I was talking.
Yeah.
And my tears came. I have to stop right away because I feel that's ridiculous. And that's what I want to share. Is
Yeah, and so maybe that would have been a good time to have some self-compassion. Like, I'm actually feeling really sad. I'm not sure why, but I'm so sorry that all these strong emotions are coming to the front. Yeah. Sometimes when our emotions come out really easily when we don't expect it, there might be something else, that is trying to get its attention, trying to get our attention, or maybe not. Maybe it's just in the sharing of what was going on for you and the breathing. That's a serious thing. So thank you so much for sharing that. Kristen has a gift card for you. Anyone else want to share, willing to share? Maybe don't want to, but you're willing to share a scenario where you needed some compassion? Thank you.
It happens to me this year. So I have a course that it's for professors, how to make your online course accessible for students. And they request me to make it like 15 minutes, and I think the course is 8 hours. So I was like, how can I put it in 15 minutes? So I was like, okay, I would just briefly introduce it, and I was so worried about the time, and I was the first presenter, and I was like, a lot of stress to do it. Like, okay. Finally, I did, and I presented, and I forgot to do an activity for engagement. And I was the first presented. I feel so bad that the second one who was presented needed to do it because I forgot it. So, yeah.
And so you needed compassion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so if you could do that now, what would you say?
Okay.
How would you offer yourself compassion?
I think, I'm not totally sure, but I think that you did your best. Like, I did my best. I tried my best. And sometimes things happen.
Yeah,
You're not perfect. We are humans.
yeah.
And if you forget something well, you have the possibility to do it again next time. So I want to put it next time in all my presentations.
Yeah.
Make an engaged activity.
And could you imagine adding to that, I'm so sorry, it's really hard?
Yeah.
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 And it's hard to say to ourselves, right? I'm so sorry, that's really hard. But we could easily say it to our friend
Yeah.
or to our family. To our family, to anyone else, but to ourselves, it's just not natural.
Yeah.
But it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Anyone else have a scenario? And then we actually are out of time. We were hoping to actually do practice through the whole Offner, but we've done it. We've done it some. Maybe in our last minute, are there any questions or comments that you would like to address to us? Yes, Rhonda.
You're talking about the self-compassion, and I find it really difficult to practice that. And I'm wondering if you can also receive a dopamine hit if you go through the process and you say those things but you don't believe it, or if that takes time to gain that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know the research about that. I don't think she says, does she mention that in her book? I can't recall. But I guess what I would say is, if I wasn't feeling results afterwards, I think what I would do is say, God, this is what I'm needing. This is the compassion that I would love to feel. Can you help me feel it? Or flood me with your peace or something. And so if I've done the practice and I'm not feeling it, I would maybe give it to God or tell a friend like you're doing. Yeah. But yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the research. My guess is that there are going to be times when you don't feel it. But also, are there not times also when someone else gives us compassion and we don't feel that? right? So something in us is not able to receive the compassion even from someone else. So then again, I would take that to God or to a trusted friend or a therapist like Janelle. Needs a mic. Thank you, Bob. Ben. Don't call you Bob.
I was just going to comment on what Rhonda was saying. We do know that positive thoughts do change our brain.
Absolutely.
So even if you might not feel that when you're giving that self-compassion to yourself, because it's a positive statement, you are still effectively changing your brain in a positive way.
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. In fact, one of my favorite books, it's written by a lady called Ruthie Jacobson, who's an Adventist, and probably a lot of people have heard her name, but she wrote this little book about joy. And one of the things she writes in there is, the last thing you said changed who you are. Yeah.
I would think that some of this takes some practice too.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So,
Yes.
I mean, we're going to get
Thank
a
you.
lot better and better and better
Absolutely.
with
Absolutely.
more and more practice at this.
Yes.
So we can't expect it to be an
No.
immediate thing.
And I don't know about you, but I've lived my whole life judging, trying to get my needs met without saying it directly, not requesting, demanding. So, I mean, all of that to undo it, your brain has a pretty, 8-lane freeway going that says judge, try to get your needs met, but don't ever say what they are and make demands. And to change that, you actually have to create a new pathway. But yes, everything you say changes your brain, and so you can create a new pathway just by saying it, even if you don't believe it. Thank you so much, Janelle. That was helpful.
I was just going to ask, because I think, Kristen, earlier you guys had talked about like white knuckling it. And I wonder if is it the same thing? Because then I'm like thinking about what was just said, fake it till you make it, right? Say it until you believe it. Or is that also in the realm of like white knuckling it and just trying to get through it? Or is there some merit to, I'm going to repeat self-compassion and self-love until it sticks, right? I know it's something that we try to practice with our kiddos, and it's also hard to share that with your kiddos if it's not of you, right? If you don't believe it of yourself, your kiddos don't do as you say, they do as you do, right? And
Yeah.
I'm watching my 2-year-old who I'm like, don't yell at the dog. And then I'm yelling at the dog. I'm like, Wesley, don't do that. And she goes, Wesley, no. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is progress. But you know what I mean? So just kind of, is there a correlation there, or is there some merit to fake it till you make it, or is that the same? Does my question make sense?
Yeah, I think I missed the very first part of what you said.
Just because earlier we had talked about, okay, we don't really have to white knuckle through certain situations,
okay, yeah.
right?
Comparing and then fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, Kristen, you want to?
I think it's a little bit different because while you were talking and while Rhonda was talking about it, not believing it, I think fake it till you make it can actually be beneficial. And I don't think it's just trying to power through. It's like, I want to believe this. I'm trying to believe it. And hopefully with more practice, I'm creating that new pathway, right?
And I probably just in my own life would change the words. Instead of fake it till you make it, I would be like practice till you make it. but that is a phrase that is used so much in recovery and whatever. And it's saying live your life like you're free, and then it will happen. And so I think it's just, I'm not comfortable with the actual fake it, but I know what they're meaning, and I love it.
But I think I have heard that from her. I feel like I
Fake
learned
it?
that in something. It's in
Oh,
my
no.
mind right now, but it was a really positive connotation. But I'm not sure what it was. But I believe what you're saying.
No idea, because I've never said that before. No, I'm joking. Totally joking. I'm sure I did. No. Go ahead. And then we need to be done because it
I
is
was going
5
to say
after.
that 18 months ago, I had an aneurysm. And I know that before the aneurysm and the person that I was, this helped me.
It helped you.
It helped me. It helped me even though for 8 months I couldn't really talk very well. And I'm a little bit better now. But I found myself talking to different people, and I I catch myself saying things I shouldn't say. And I say things, and I probably should just be quiet, because a lot of times I have to be. Sometimes I will talk about things, and I can get it out pretty much, but people, you just don't know who doesn't know. I don't know that. I didn't learn a lot of things. I didn't learn a lot after I stopped, after I got my talking back. But even before that, life was a myriad of things back from childhood all the way up to here. And now that I'm feeling better, I actually have learned to speak to people in a way that's more loving, more caring about
Wow.
what they are.
Wow, that's
And
beautiful.
Because I found something in myself. Even the TIA I had about October 5th, and it was the second time. It was the time the Lord was telling me, something's up. Come on, hang in there, hang in there. And that really explained a lot. But a lot of times I shouldn't say things I should. I don't know why I do that. I don't mean to do that, but it's a
That you and Paul both say that, don't you?
Paul?
Paul in Scripture, yeah, he says, "Why do I do what I don't want to do?"
You get love. Yep, that's
And
right.
Paul, I mean, he was like the best writer in the Bible, maybe the best apostle, whatever. He's this great man, and he's like, I do what I don't want to do. I say what I don't want to say. It's the human condition. It's sin. You know, I'm not saying you're sinning. I'm saying we're broke. I'm back to Charlie and Addie's. The world is broken and it's too windy. Okay, we are going to finish. If anyone wants to stay around and chat for a moment, we would be happy for that, but we want to let you go and not hold you captive because it is after 3. Do you want to end with prayer?
Sure. Dear God, thank you so much for your Sabbath day, and thank you, God, for everyone here that we get to learn together and laugh together and grow together. And please, God, help this not to be the end of our growing together as we're trying to speak compassionately and speak the truth in love. Please help us to be able to feel comfortable to bounce ideas off of each other and continue having these conversations, because we want to spread this message with so many people and just spread your love with others. Thank you again for your day. In your name, amen.
Thank you so much for joining us, you guys. It was a blessing to us. We love doing this, as you can tell, and we just thank you for being alongside with us.